Many salutations, viewer, and welcome to the 50 subscriber special video. Due to the time constraint that I set upon myself in the announcement of this video, and in constraints due to things in the real world, I wasn't able to include the entirety of this submission for this special. If you wish, you can read the entire thing on Wattpad, of which the link will be provided in the description below. Now, before we get on to the actual video, I must give a warning that this is a very heavy and sad scene that was written by the author. So if you aren't exactly in a great place mentally, I highly suggest that you not watch this video, because it will hit you pretty hard in the feels. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by, and enjoy the presentation. Emilia's Goodbye, written by Starry Lover 1.
She was dead. Emilia had passed after a long battle between herself and her terminal illness. Despite the efforts of the doctors and nurses treating her, her body finally succumbed to the inevitable, and she breathed her last. And Dr. Callum did all that he could to give his wife a peaceful passing, even if internally he was racked with guilt and shame. If he had wanted to, he could have healed her of her illness completely. His gift of healing was outmatched by none in his field, but this would only prolong what was inevitable. The goodbye would have only hurt more in the end had he intervened. As the heart rate monitor echoed its flat song in the silent room, he stared down at his wife, holding her hand ever so gently.
Could I have a moment alone with her?
He asked his nurses quietly.
Would you like us to tell your family of her passing?
One asked, as the others began to file out into the hallway.
Yes, you may.
He replied solemnly. As soon as they had left him in the quiet, Callum leaned down and planted a kiss on his love's head, bringing her spirit to life one last time. When she opened her eyes, she looked up at him.
Callum?
She whispered weakly.
It's me, love. Rise and walk with me.
He said softly, gently lifting up her hand.
Walk where? There is nowhere to walk inside this room.
With a wave of his free hand, the far end of the room faded away, and a vast starry ocean stretched out before them, almost endless in length.
Come along now. We have much to see.
He said once again, removing his doctor's coat before helping her rise to her feet. As they began their slow walk, she watched as his human features began to fade. His long brown hair fading into a pale silver as it grew in length, while his almost violet eyes became speckled with numerous stars. In the blink of an eye, his scrubs were replaced with ornate robes that flowed around him smoothly, ones that surely belonged to a being considered a deity by some. At this revelation, Emilia looked to him with a surprised smirk.
I should have known. You weren't like most people I knew anyway.
Callum smiled at her wistfully, squeezing her hand as he led her out further into the waters. They walked, and walked further still in companionable silence, until she stopped, causing him to look back at her. He knew what she was going to say, of course. She wanted answers.
So, all along you were this star deity whose job it was to watch humanity.
He smiled again.
No, though I was created by him. I was born from his desire to heal and nurture his mortal children of Earth, and to live among humanity as one of them.
So, your knack for helping the sick and injured, it didn't come from skills or years studying at college? It was just in you this whole time?
She replied quickly, her tone somewhat sharper than it had been seconds ago.
Yes, love, it was.
he said softly.
Then why can't you breathe me back to life?
She ripped her hand away from him, a sudden fury hot in her chest.
Why can't you take the illness that took me away? Please, bring me back right now! I want to see our daughter grow up! I want to see Alyssa again! Why can't you just do that for me? Answer me, Callum!
Her cries were desperate. Emilia had left her small daughter behind too soon, without as much as an I love you or I'll see you again someday. Incomplete, without any sense of closure to be felt. Callum was silent, motionless as tears welled in her eyes, his eyes cast downward. He knew her pain very well, and did not blame her for this anger, even if she couldn't see what he did.
You don't know how many times I've kept you from dying, my love,
He answered finally. Emilia froze. Her fiery rage turned to ice in an instant. She stared at him with wide eyes, afraid to even speak.
What do you mean?
He let out a heavy sigh, still looking downward.
The car accident, the break-in, the plane incident, all of that. All of those moments where you were in danger, those were times where you were supposed to die. And I kept you from it.
As he spoke, she did remember those instances where she felt as though her life was threatened, but he was always there. Somehow he never left her side and, unbeknownst to her, had kept her safe each time. How many other instances were there that she didn't know? How many times did he cheat death itself for her sake? He continued, his breath becoming shaky as he spoke.
Do you understand, lover? You were destined to die, and I tried my damnedest to make sure it had come to pass yet. I've had to wrestle with this for many years. Every time the opportunity came for you to be taken from me. But even I have my limits on what I can and can't do. If I had my way, I would alter Kayla's design and you would be home with Alyssa, tucking her into bed and reading her a bedtime story. You would still be alive, staying up late, waiting for me to come home from work. That would be if I could. If I could do it. But no one can change what he has designed for the world. Not even me, Emilia.
He paused a moment, finally looking at her with eyes lined with silver, reaching out to grasp her hands and held them tight.
I'm sorry, Emilia. I did my best. I did my best to keep you alive so that you could watch our daughter grow up. But I can't do it. Not without sacrificing another life in exchange. I just can't. The decision has already been made.
Callum.
Emilia whispered, looking up into his sorrowful eyes. Even if he had kept many things from her, she knew he was an honest man at heart. She could feel the sincerity in his words, the pain in his voice, and it crushed her to her very core. After a brief moment of silence, she approached him, wrapping her arms around his waist and holding him close.
Callum, if I'm gonna go, can you at least tell me one thing?
Yes, my love, anything. What is it?
He whispered. She sighed, looking up at him once more, a stray tear rolling down her cheek.
Will Alyssa be alright? Please, tell me she'll be alright.
Callum gently cupped her cheek with one hand, wiping away said tear with his thumb.
She will be, Emilia. Alyssa has a bright future ahead of her. She will be fine. She will have her Aunt June to look after her.
She smiled, though still teary-eyed.
My June. She always did want kids, even if she could never bear them herself. I'm sure June will love her, just like I did.
He opened his eyes, and there he stood in the hospital room once more, the lifeless body of his Emilia lying peacefully before him. The moments next were a blur. Loved ones and family rushed in to see her, to cry out and to mourn her loss. June, his beloved sister, was amongst them too. But even then, there was only one person he could see within the shifting crowd, the one who carried the last bits of Emilia's light within her. Alyssa, his little girl that stood still by the bed, staring, waiting for any sign of life if there were any. She looked so much like her, more than he had realized before. The way her hair glistened in the light, her gentle face, her zest for life, all that she inherited from his beloved and made her very own. It broke his heart into countless shards. The thought of his little one without her other half to laugh and to cry with, to teach her and to hold her. Callum was an angel, yet he refused his divinity for just this moment. He didn't want it. All he wanted now was his family. Once most of the crowd had siphoned themselves into the hallway, he came to young Alyssa, who silently wept while still holding her mother's hand. He placed his hand on her small head, ruffling through her soft hair ever so gently. In response, she tugged on his coat sleeve, her eyes still fixed on her mother's peaceful face.
"She's gone now, isn't she?"
she whispered, though he could hear it loud and clear above the noise. Those tiny words stabbed into him like newly sharpened daggers, causing more tears to escape his eyes as her tiny voice spoke. She was still young, but she was smart, too smart to accept a sugar-coated answer from anyone. He quickly wiped his eyes, pulling her into a tight hug, holding her like she too would escape his grasp.
Yes, my little one, she is. But only for now. You will see her again someday. I promise.
Soft sobs reached his ears from within his embrace, her tears wetting his shirt.
"Daddy, I don't want to say goodbye. She didn't teach me how to ride that old bike yet,"
she whimpered.
I know, my little one. I know.
He whispered, planting a kiss on top of her head, silently vowing to himself that he would always be there for her, his little starlight, even if only to watch out for her through spirit alone. He would cherish each moment of her life while it lasted, as the humans did, as he did with his beloved Emilia before she said goodbye.